King Henry VIII is known today for his many infamous kingly escapades, but in reality, he was never even meant to be king. Henry was overshadowed by his elder brother, Arthur, Prince of Wales, for most of his younger life, because Arthur was set to take the throne and Henry was not. However, when Arthur died in 1509, Henry abruptly became king at age 17, and even got a papal dispensation to marry his brother's 23-year-old widow, Catherine of Aragon. As a young man, Henry was very pious and defended the Roman Catholic Church against Martin Luther, ultimately earning him the title of Fidei Defensor, or Defender of the Faith, as well as the Pope's admiration. However, King Henry's never-ending quest for a male heir, and perhaps even love, led him towards the center of the Protestant Reformation movement within England, subsequently changing the country and the world forever. In 1522, Anne Boleyn became a maid of honor to Catherine of Aragon and moved into King Henry's court, and quickly attracted the attention of many men within the court, including Lord Henry Percy, the 6th Earl of Northumberland, who desired to marry her. King Henry, himself now also seemingly enraptured by Anne, ordered against this marriage. At the time, Anne's sister, Mary Boleyn, was one of Henry's mistresses. This factor was one of the reasons why Anne initially rejected Henry in 1525, after he wrote to her saying, "If you give yourself up heart, body, and soul to me, I will take you for my only mistress, rejecting from thought and affection all others save yourself." Anne replied to this saying, "Your wife I cannot be, both in respect of mine own unworthiness, and also because you have a queen already. Your mistress I will not be." Now fully devoted to Anne, Henry is desperate to divorce and replace Catherine. To do so, however, Henry must be granted a second papal dispensation to annul his marriage. And to avoid being known as an adulterer, Henry had to get creative in persuading the Pope to why he was deserving of the annulment. Henry specifically used a line from the Bible's Book of Leviticus that said a man who marries his brother's widow would be cursed with childlessness to do this. The Pope didn't buy it, however, seeing as he had already granted a dispensation to Henry, and he felt he no longer owed him anything. Even when Henry tried to get a divorce in England, officiated by the bishop, the Pope scrapped the case and once again denied him. Henry's resulting frustration from this is what fueled the English Reformation's fire from then on. Vindictive as ever, Henry feels personally attacked, so he marries the heavily pregnant Anne in secret. As for his marriage to Catherine, well, Henry passed the Act of Restraint and Appeals in 1533 in order to eliminate the Pope's authority in England. Furthermore, Henry ordained Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop, and forced him to annul the marriage to Catherine. By that June, Anne was the official Queen of England. This ultimate checkmate was the turning point in the English Reformation, as the elimination of the Roman Catholic Church's power in England left a substantial gap for a new religion to fill. To this, Henry had the perfect solution: Protestantism. With Anne by his side and the Pope out of his hair, it would be expected that Henry would be content with what he had. But he was still enraged and wanted to stick the Roman Catholic Church right in the back. In his Act of Supremacy, 1534, Henry ordained himself
Supreme Head of the Church of England,
giving himself complete religious and political power, as well as severing the last ties between England and Rome. Starting in 1536, Henry and his buddy, Thomas Cromwell, began the process known as the Dissolution, where all of the monasteries in England were closed and the monks were turned away. In 4 years, over 800 monasteries were closed and the monks were prosecuted. Many of their monks were blatantly immoral and greatly strayed from the religious path. In fact, many of the monks openly admitted to fathering several children and practicing polygamy. For the peasants, the movement away from the church was widely accepted, as the Act of Restraint and Appeals got rid of the high charges for burials, marriages, and christenings, among other unethical philosophies preached by the church. Many of them actually profited, as Henry allowed them to raid the monasteries as long as the gold and silver was turned in, giving the peasants an opportunity to build houses out of reused wood and brick, as well as eat the leftover food meant for the monks. There was really only one group of people who disagreed with the movement away from the Roman Catholic Church, and that was the Pilgrimage of Grace, who charged Parliament in 1536. Henry was quickly able to diffuse the situation by saying he would listen to their criticisms and reverse the separation from the Roman Catholic Church, which would turn out to be a blatant lie. Anne Boleyn and Catherine of Aragon did not remain Henry's only wives. After Henry's divorce from Catherine, Anne gave birth to a baby girl named Elizabeth, who would later become Queen Elizabeth I. However, a happy couple they did not remain. Henry was still, after all, looking for a male heir, and after Anne had 2 miscarriages, around spring of 1536, Henry began courting a young Jane Seymour. Months later, Anne Boleyn was executed on false claims of incest, witchcraft, adultery, and conspiracy against the king. However, she has now been regarded as a key figurehead of politics and religion during the Reformation. A day after Anne's execution, King Henry married Jane Seymour. She gave birth to her only child, who would later become King Edward VI, but died 2 weeks later due to postnatal complications. Her motto had been, "Bound to obey and serve," and originally took Anne's inability to bear more children as an opportunity to pursue Henry VIII. Jane herself was threatened with execution by Henry after displaying sympathy towards Anne Boleyn, but of course avoided that fate. She was the only one of King Henry's wives to receive a proper funeral. Anne of Cleves was Henry's next wife. He considered her ugly, although a report of her looks read, "Every man praiseth the beauty of the same lady, as well for the face as for the whole body. She excelleth as far the Duchess of Milan as the golden sun excelleth the silver moon." Henry had sent his portrait painter to see Anne for himself before he would commit to a marriage to her, and was happy with the results of the portrait. However, when he saw her in real life for the first time, he exclaimed, "I like her not, I like her not." His marriage to Anne lasted 6 months until it was annulled after being declared illegal due to Henry and Anne never consummating it. Anne of Cleves reportedly did not actually know what consummated a marriage and thought she was pregnant after questioning that when he, Henry, comes to bed he kisses me and taketh me by the hand and biddeth me good night, sweetheart, and in the morning kisses me and biddeth me farewell, darling. Henry VIII's 5th wife, Catherine Howard, was the most distinct out of the rest. Cousin of Anne Boleyn, Catherine was described as a juvenile delinquent, a natural tart, a whore, and stupid and oversexed. At age 13, she was involved with her older music teacher, Henry Mannix, and later a man named Francis Dereham. However, this was all overshadowed when she became involved with her distant cousin, Thomas Culpeper, who she described as a sweet little fool, and whose involvement with her got her executed for adultery. Henry's final marriage was to Catherine Parr, who was scandalous in that she had already been married several times. Catherine was well regarded for her intelligence and her interest in theology, but her time as queen was short-lived, as Henry died 4 years into the marriage. Widowed, Catherine continued to care for Elizabeth I and remarried to Thomas Seymour, who was Jane Seymour's brother. Shortly after her wedding, Jane sent Elizabeth away because she thought she was too tempting to Thomas. Only a year into the marriage, Catherine died of childbirth. Although Henry VIII was known for his charismatic ways in his early reign as king, his health and character quickly deteriorated in a jousting accident in 1536. He was racked with constant infection from an open ulcer on his leg and quickly grew to be morbidly obese because he could no longer exercise. By 1546, Henry was so obese he couldn't even walk and instead relied on people to carry him around in a wooden chair. In 1547, at the age of 55, Henry VIII died of liver and kidney failure.
My king.
Historians believe that Henry had syphilis, which explains the many stillbirth children he had fathered. Additionally, considering that Henry wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon because of her several stillbirths, which then caused him to split from the Roman Catholic Church, it's funny to think that Henry VIII most likely gave Catherine syphilis, which caused her inability to produce an heir, as well as his key role in the Protestant Reformation movement within England.